मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानि नाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं निराकाररूपो विभूत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेया चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम्
Shivoham. So I hope you can all hear me, and it's wonderful to be with you again Sunday morning, our weekly Sunday Satsang. Satsang. Sangha means truth. Sangha actually means community. Satsanga means a community of sentient beings seeking the truth. Somebody asked in a question, what is truth? Truth is that which is timeless, which never changes. There are, of course, relative truths, like we have a body, there's experience, there's a universe, there's a mind, there's a personality, there's a person. Those are relative truths. And they are symbolic representations of absolute truth, which means timeless and unchanging and absolute, but modifying itself into ever-changing forms and phenomena. So we too have relative identities and we have absolute identities. Our relative identities are body, mind, and perceptual experience, which we call the changing person, but also that goes along with the changing experience of the universe. And that is relative identity, both of the self as a person and the universe as the experience of the person. But that experience of the universe includes what we call mind, body, intellect, ego, perceptual activity, and universe, all changing in timeless now. Recycling as memory, and then evolving to higher levels of creativity, abstraction, expression, and evolution. That's what Sangha allows us to experience collectively through reflection, through inquiry, through meditation, through metacognition, and through many other techniques, including the 8 limbs of yoga. So at some point, I'm going to address some of the questions that came in. But before I do that, I was looking at my notes this morning and I thought, what should I talk about today? And very coincidentally, the first thing that cropped up in my notes here on my phone is the 37 qualities of the unified field. So I thought, let me talk about this today and then take in some of your questions and maybe possibly go into a couple of techniques. So these 37 qualities of the unified field that showed up in my notes on my iPhone today, they were created a long time ago. in the company of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was my guru, my teacher, and other colleagues, including Tony Nader and many other scientists, philosophers, and those in that particular sangha at that particular time. So let me explain to you what we mean by the unified field here. So science at the moment, with its ontological primitive as matter, tries to explain the unified field of existence as the source of everything that we call the universe. And in that unified field theory, there are four forces. Electromagnetism, which is responsible for heat, light, electricity, magnetism, the electromagnetic field of photons, virtual photons, which we're using right now to have this conversation, this computer, and all the information technologies that we use right now are based on the electromagnetic field. So that's one force of nature. The second force of nature is what is called the strong interaction, and it's a force that holds the nucleus of an atom together. You blow it, nuclear explosion, strong interaction. And then there's a third force called the weak interaction, which is responsible for radioactive decay and the transformation of one element to another. The higher elements going back to the earlier primitive elements. As you know, the periodic table is just fundamental particles and atoms like hydrogen and helium evolving all the way to very complex, heavy metals and heavy atoms. So the weak force is that which causes radioactive decay. And then there is gravity. Okay, so these are the four forces that explain everything that we call the physical universe. And at this moment, this is an unfulfilled dream because the equations of general relativity and the equations of quantum physics don't kind of agree with each other on the nature of fundamental reality. So even though electromagnetism, weak and strong interactions have been unified, gravity remains an outlier. And that was Einstein's dream, which has not been fulfilled up to now. And there are other problems with these theories when we come to trying to explain dark matter, dark energy, etc. But leave that aside for a moment. The unified field of modern science is gravity, the holy grail, if we ever find it, is gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak interactions. And that's it. But none of those things explain consciousness. So with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and very interesting scientists, we started to discuss the unified field of consciousness, because without consciousness, existence can't be known. And so when we say truth, we mean awareness, existence, and the knowing of awareness, existence. Without the knowing of awareness, existence, then there is no experience of existence. Experience of existence, awareness of existence go together, and non-existence is not an experience. So we can't even talk about it. So what is the unified field of consciousness? The unified field of consciousness is that which differentiates by itself and recycles as all knowers, all modes of knowing, and all things known. So right now, this is what is happening. You and I, on this dreamscape that we call the internet, are all knowers, but we are all engaged right now in a modality that is called knowing. And we are all experiencing some form of knowledge, which we call the known. So this is consciousness differentiating into species-specific modes of knowers, knowing, and that which is known. Very simple principle. All knowledge is structured in consciousness. All knowledge is structured in consciousness. Without consciousness, there's no knowledge, and without knowledge, there's no explanation for anything whatsoever. So, how do we come up with the explanations? By theories, experiments, observations, deductions, inference, language, representation, categorization, understanding, meaning, purpose. This is how we understand what we call existence. So now let us look at, and I'm only going to mention 10 qualities of the unified field. There are 37 here in my notes. We can explore each of these forever if you want. So, but let's today just mention the first 10, and then we'll soon go into your questions and maybe some deeper experiential understanding. So these are the 37 principles, qualities, whatever you want to call, of the unified field of consciousness. And they are symbolically represented in wisdom traditions as deities, archetypes, gods, goddesses, angels. It doesn't matter. They're extended aspects of ourself. Since we can't conceptualize the infinite, why can't we conceptualize the infinite? Because it has no form, and therefore it's formless and borderless and infinite. You can't conceptualize it. Conceptualize means you conceive of something that is finite. So you can't conceptualize the infinite because it is doing the conceptualizing. You can't see the infinite because it is the one that's seeing, looking through your eyes and my eyes and the eyes of every sentient being. You can't hear it, you can't imagine it. That's the first hymn, by the way, that we opened. You can't, in any shape or form, conceptualize, imagine, see, hear, taste, smell, know the infinite through the mind, because it is what is doing those things, including creating the mind. The infinite knows the mind. The infinite conceptualizes. The infinite in you, the divine in you, actually does all that we call experience. Every movement, every perception, every interpretation, every explanation is the divine in you that is self-aware. And as we practice metacognition, which means awareness in the present moment of sensory experience and motor activity without judgment, the highest instinct to know ourselves emerges. And what's the highest instinct? That which we call the divine or God. To find the divine is our instinct as humans. So here are the 10 principles. Number 1, infinite silence. This is Shiva. Shiva is the symbolic representation. The void, static, stillness, colorless, shunyata. It is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent silence. That's first quality. Second, infinite dynamism. This is Vishnu, fullness, totality, radiant, vibrant, brilliant, effulgent, bubbling with potential. It's omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient dynamism. It's the Shakti, the divine feminine, as both Vishnu, but also, as you'll see, Saraswati. The third is the gate principle. Gate principle means the gateway to liberation. And symbolically, in Indian wisdom traditions, represented by Ganesha or Ganapati, the unified field is the gateway to liberation of freedom. The principle of this entry, the vortex, operates throughout nature. So at some point, I will explain the symbolic manifestations of Ganesh as we invoke that energy within us. The fourth quality is freedom. This is represented by the sky deity, Dyaspita. The unified field is totally free. It is not bound by its constructs. Number 5, omnipresence. The quality of omnipresence represented by Krishna, The mud-eating Leela is the signature life of Krishna, underscoring this principle. In a little bit of mud or soil is the planetary microbiome for all sentient beings of this planet, and ultimately the creation of the biosphere. Remember, when I use these Sanskrit words, gods, goddesses, deities, archetypes, they're all basically symbolic representations of higher consciousness. Fundamental reality is non-symbolic and the source of all symbols. Number 6, omnipotent. This is represented by Varaha avatar. He lifted the entire earth with its tusks. Varatha, the elephant deity as well. The 7th quality is invincibility. The unified is invulnerable. This is represented by Kartikeya. The Gita says of the generals, I am Kartikeya. 8, quality, order and perfection, the principle of perfect orderliness represented by Ram, and 9, evolutionary, represented by Mother Ganga. It starts as a drop and evolves into mighty torrent storms and everything that we call fertility, abundance. The 10th is omniscience, infinite unbounded knowledge. This is represented by Saraswati, the goddess of language, culture, art, science, music, and poetry. So there you are, 10 qualities of the unified field of consciousness. We can invoke each of these qualities through Tantra, Mantra, and Yantra. That is some of the technology that goes into invoking expanded energies until we get to the source of all energy. So right now, if we think of reality as physical, then we think in terms of matter. But when we look at matter, we actually begin to realize that what we as humans call matter is a changing perceptual activity interpreted as matter because it feels solid, it's hard, okay, it has solidity and volume and density. Matter is the inertial aspect of consciousness, and it's a human construct for a changing perceptual experience. When you look hard for matter or a physical world, you won't find it there. All you'll find is the limitations of your perceptual activity, and of course, through science, the extension of the limitations of our perceptual activity. But you will not find the source of that activity, which gives rise to both the perceptual activity and the interpretation of that perceptual activity that we call matter. Okay. The second scientific physicalist idea is energy. So energy is all those things I mentioned: electromagnetic energy, strong and weak interactions. In a way, gravity gives us the experience of movement and density and inertia. So it also is part of that equation, energy. But in consciousness perspective, energy is just the fluctuations of consciousness, the vibrations of consciousness. And then we have something that and also we know that energy and matter are the same thing. E is equal to mc squared. But in Vedantic traditions, there's another energy called prana. And that other energy is actually the vital energy responsible for what we call traditional energy, which is matter. And that is subtle energy. It's called prana, and it has 5 divisions to it: prana vayu, apana vayu, vyana vayu, udana vayu. And these are different movements, both mental and subtle, and also physical: upward movement, downward movement, circulation, digestion, spreading out of the movement, ingestion, evacuation, sensory perception, which gives rise to the experience of what we call perceptual reality that we call matter and energy. So that's prana. And then there are even subtler energies that are also forms of prana, because prana in turn has subdivisions at the subtle level that moves the mind, the intellect, the ego. And so, what is it that moves prana? That ultimately is, of course, consciousness. So, this is how the ontology is explained as fundamentally pure consciousness, differentiating into everything that we call experience. And conscious experience is not the only experience we have. So, right now, you're having, I hope, a conscious experience. But then we have dreams, which are more subtle experiences, but there's still fluctuations of consciousness. And then we have experience called sleep. How do we know there's experience sleep? Well, first of all, if there's anything happening in your body or your mind, a nightmare or a thought that emerges in deep sleep that is troublesome or some discomfort, then you wake up. That means your awareness was awake in sleep. It was not, it just wasn't fluctuating with experience. So there's experience, there's subconscious experience, there's unconscious experience, and there's the source of experience. The source of experience is not in time, it's timeless, it's formless, and it is fluctuating at all times as form and phenomena. And everything is both recycling and evolving. So you've probably heard that beautiful poetic expression from Rumi. When I die, I will soar with angels, but when I die to the angels, what I shall become, you cannot imagine. Okay, so imagination. Imagination is the making of images. Now, in every religion, they also say, do not confuse idols of God with God. But what they mean by idols are the energies, the states of information, the states of knowledge that give rise to symbolic experience. Everything you experience on a conscious level is symbolic. Every experience actually is symbolic. So colors are symbolic, forms are symbolic, uh, shapes are symbolic, tastes. Every taste represents something. Okay, strawberry, chocolate, vanilla. Fragrances are symbolic. Thoughts are symbolic. Emotions are symbolic. And who are we as biological organisms? We are modes of knowing. Modes of knowing through the five senses, through the mind, through the intellect, through feelings. So this is where yoga comes in. Raj Yoga, which is frequently called the Royal Yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, you know, the what you call yamas, niyamas, asanas, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi are Raj Yoga, the Royal Yoga. Because when we practice these yogas, the mind moves away from itself. The awareness moves away from the mind, from the storytelling, from the interpretation, from the modeling, from the symbolic representations. It moves back in the direction of non-symbolic awareness through Raj Yoga, Royal Yoga, okay, which includes Hatha Yoga and all the things I mentioned, the 8 limbs. But then there's the yoga of feeling, the highest feeling, of course, being love. Love not as a sentiment, but as the highest truth of inseparability, that we are all the same knower in different modes of knowing, the same observer in different modes of observing, the same seer in different modes of seeing and therefore different sceneries, the same lover, but with innumerable representations as the beloved. And when the seer and the scenery become one, when the feeler and the feeling become one, that is the highest love. Highest love. The beloved and the lovers become one. and there is pure love, highest form of knowing. So Raj Yoga is pure knowing, and Bhakti Yoga is pure feeling, highest level, starting from empathy, compassion, joy, equanimity, pure love, ecstatic love, transcendent love, non-symbolic love. And then there's the yoga of the intellect, using the intellect to go beyond the intellect. And that's the first hymn, Neti, Neti, Neti. Not this, not this, not this. What's left? The infinite, absolute zero that differentiates into all forms and phenomena. Every form is a phenomena, and every phenomena is a vritti, fluctuation, a mode of knowing, and very specific for humans because humans also include modes of self-knowing. Okay, so that's Bhakti Yoga and Jnana Yoga, and there's Karma Yoga, which is what we all are engaged in, I hope, love in action, one of the core principles of our Chopra Foundation strategy to reach critical mass through love in action. That's a little bit of a summary on how we find truth. But there's a lot more. I mentioned 10 qualities of the unified field. We can go over the remaining in subsequent satsangs, or we can do whatever you want. We can go over many of these modes of knowing. But right now, why don't we actually do a little bit of reflection right now? So as we finish off in the next few minutes before I take your questions, let's ask ourselves the following questions, and you can respond internally. Okay, so the first question I would like to ask you, and you can ask yourself, is: am I my name? Am I the name that was given to me by my parents? Reflect that. If you say yes, then say yes right here. If you say no, then no. Are you your name? Please respond. The answer should be obvious to you. Are you your name? Okay, so your name is your provisional identity. It was given to you. You're not actually what you call your name. Your name represents you. It's a symbol. Am I my gender? Yes, no. Okay. Is a sentient being that you are, self-awareness, defined by your gender? Yes or no? Are you your profession? Well, I'm a doctor, but I'm also a writer. I'm also a father. I'm also a son. I'm also a teacher. I'm also a student. So am I defined by my profession? Am I defined by the roles I play? Yes, no. Am I defined by my intellect, or what society calls my intellect, most of which is magical lies? Yes, no. Am I defined by my education? Are there people who are much smarter and have access to genius who didn't have my education? Am I my thoughts? Am I defined by my relationships? Am I my provisional, arbitrary, selective memories? Am I my intentions and changing desires? Am I my beliefs? Beliefs are just thoughts we hold to be true. Once we don't hold them to be true, they're no longer beliefs. Well, if you said no to most, then you arrived at the truth. One of the ways to arrive closer to truth, closer to absolute truth, is through this process. Find out everything you're not till you're left with everything that you are, the infinite being, the divine in disguise as a person. The person is a process in the divine. Therefore, God is our highest instinct to know ourselves. And when we know ourselves as the divine, infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities. I saw the first question, Elvira German, how can we influence our karma? Okay, so karma is what is happening right now. Okay, look around you. Karma is happening. Close your eyes, listen to your internal dialogue. Karma is happening. See any images that are coming in your consciousness right now. Karma is happening. Feel any emotions, any sensations. Karma is happening. All experience is karma, is memory. Okay. It's called recognition. You recognize this as a phone or a handheld device. You recognize this as a watch. Recognize. You know what you already know. And why? Because you've interpreted in the past. And that's called karma. Okay, so karma is what's happening right now. Okay. How some things are good, some things are not pleasant, but whatever is happening, it's happening right now. Your body is also part of your karma. So how do we go with beyond karma? We can pay our karmic debts. We can transform karma. We can transmute karma. And we can transcend karma. So karma determines what's happening right now. What you do with what's happening right now depends on your level of awareness. So if you might respond to whatever is happening in the fight-flight response, in the reactive response, in the restful awareness, intuitive, creative, visionary, sacred, at each of these levels, you transcend a little bit of karma and you acquire more freedom. Linde W, is karma only when in the physical realm? It's a very good question. Karma is in the physical and mental realm. Okay. So we're living most of the time in the mental realm, and it determines our perceptual interpretations, which we call the physical realm. So actually, in Sanskrit, sometimes planet Earth is referred to as Karma Bhumi, the planet of karma, the loka of karma. But there are other lokas. Lokas are frequency domains of consciousness that appear as locations in space-time. So karma is what makes experience possible also. Without the physical body, there is karma of the subtle body in a loka of subtle dimensions. And then without the subtle body, there's the processing non-locally of karma, the recycling, and the re-emergence, evolutionarily speaking, the 5 acts of Shiva: creation, maintenance, or sustainability, dissolution, concealment, resurrection, and revelation. Sumit Kumar Pandey, is there any life after death? Well, I've said this before. Life is the continuum of birth and death. Birth and death are complementary aspects of life. And so death and birth are happening ceaselessly, what we call timeless now. Is there life after the dissolution of the process that we call a person? Yes, of course, because the person is in time, But life is not in time. Life is the source of space and time. Okay. Margarita Ferrer, after death is there life, and when will we see loved ones again? So every loved one is a reflection of yourself. And so what we call love for a person is seeing yourself in what we call the other. What we call beauty in an object is seeing yourself in an object, whatever that object is. When you see yourself in an object, self means the presence of being, then you feel beauty. Beauty, love, and truth and goodness and harmony go together. And in Sanskrit, these are called Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. So there's only the recycling of relationship, only the recycling of relationship in timeless now. And the purpose of this recycling of relationship is that relationship by itself, the mirror of relationship, is karma. Okay, and therefore, the only way to freedom is also through understanding that all relationship with the other is a relationship with the self. Every person, every situation, every circumstance, every event, every quality of relationship is a reflection of your relationship with yourself in the matrix of interbeingness. In the matrix of interbeingness. So that is what we're talking about, okay, right now. No relationship ends, but relationships transform. Kenobi, how can I download the consciousness in Dharmakaya? So, just now this Kenobi is introduced a Buddhist term called Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya, in Buddhist literature, there's Nirmanakaya, which is the world of space-time, objects, and causality. Okay. Nirmanakaya. Is that what it's called? Nirmanakaya? But the Dharmakaya is the source, okay? Dharmakaya is the source. And then the subtle realms and physical realms are the expression. So Teilhard de Chardin called this Dharmakaya the theosphere. And then there's the noosphere and there's the biosphere. But they're all differentiated aspects of what we call the theosphere or the Dharmakaya. And it's also called Ein Sof. We can use other words, Allah, Brahman, unified field. We just used that word, source of everything. And the answer was, how do we download? Through metacognition and through deep stillness and understanding the qualities of the unified field, which we'll go through slowly. Okay, but we will go through them. Okay, but I hope I answered your question. You cannot download the Dharmakaya with thought. You have to go to the source of thought, to the source of all vrittis, which is the second verse in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, in the first chapter. Yog Chit Vritti Nirod. Prashant Thakuri is observer-based science possible. All science is actually observer-based, but because, theories are constructed in the consciousness of the observer, experiments are designed in the consciousness of the observer, observations are made in the consciousness of the observer, interpretations, validation, falsification, all happens in the consciousness of the observer. So all science is observer-based. What the deeper question is, can we study the observer? And that is the science of yoga. And that is the science of Sanatana Dharam. That is the science of consciousness. Consciousness understanding itself. Only a science that has both entities, outer and inner, merged into one experience will be a true science. Until then, science is partially accurate. It has major inconsistency. It assumes an embodied observer when in fact the body is an experiencing observer. It assumes a subject-object split, which is artificial. And current science assumes a physicalist ontology, matter as the ontological primitive. So it's incomplete. But I'm confident that science will evolve as science and consciousness. Sandra LaRocque, what is your profound example of real God connection experience? The state of grace. This is what we call spontaneous fulfillment of desire, the opening up of what we call miracles in every life, meaningful coincidences, synchronicity, what we could scientifically call acausal, without cause, quantum mechanical at a very fundamental level, acausal, non-local, outside of space-time, quantum mechanical interrelatedness. You feel you're part of the matrix and every thought finds its fulfillment. Just like that. Manifestation. That is divine consciousness. But we can go more into details if you want on how to cultivate that divine consciousness. Hint, hint. It's the highest love. But there are other ways, and we mentioned about that. Camila Schmidt, how can I help with your love in action journey? Thank you for asking. So here's the URL, www.neveralone.love. www.neveralone.love. Start engaging with us in that conversation. I'm developing some peace practices, and I hope that those who engage with neveralone.love can become peace ambassadors globally. Thinking of if we create a critical mass of peace ambassadors, maybe call it the conscious peace corps. If you like that idea, let's do it. Okay, through neveralone.love. Jacques Noguera, why is it difficult for most of us to have abundance in our lives? Because we think only of abundance in terms of money. So I love to quote Bob Marley. He says, some people are so poor, all they have is money. If you want to cultivate abundance in life, then redefine what it means to have success. Success is the progressive realization of worthy goals, the ability to love and have compassion. It is also the ability to get in touch with your creative center. And creative intelligence has 7 centers. We call them the 7 chakras. So I'm right now doing a book called The Yoga of Money, which will talk about abundance at all these levels. Armando Jaco, what does receiving revelation look like? So revelation means revealed truth, right? So revealed truth, which is a very interesting word because it is not a mental experience. It's beyond the mind. It's not motivation. It's what we call inspiration, to be in spirit. How does it feel? Like ecstatic. There are all levels of ecstasy that emerge. Physical ecstasy, exaltation of the senses, mythical ecstasy, the knowing that gods and goddesses in embryo are representations of the infinite in myself, and they have only one desire, they want to be born. And sacred ecstasy, absolute revelation and exuberance and delight in the infinite being. I put together a while ago some verses from the Gnostic Gospels. This is what revelation could feel like. This is from one of the Gnostic Gospels, putting together various verses from different sources. Whoever the seeker is has awakened to the divine within herself, itself, himself. Speaking to God says, you split me and you tore my heart open. You filled me with love. You poured your spirit into mine. I knew you as I know myself. My eyes are radiant with your light. My ears delight in your music. My nostrils are filled with your fragrance. My face is covered with your dew. You have made me see all things shining. You have made me see all things new. You have granted me perfect ease. I have become like paradise. That is awakening. That is revelation. Audrey, how do we live in the now if everything is in the past? So, interpretation of the now is what creates time. So when you are aware without inference or interpretation, then the moment of time transcends into the source of time, which is timeless now. So this ends today's Q&A session. Thank you very much. I'm going to stay here for a bit to see any more comments. And I am grateful to have shared today's satsang with you. Within you.
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानिनाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्तपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्य चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेया चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवो